So, Lone Rider here. Now, in addition to being a cyclist and historical fencer, I also do target shooting. Now, granted, that's mostly with the bow, archery. I have firearms though, and I think they're kind of cool, and don't see any problem with that. I don't know why some people do. I guess people are strange. The Doors got it right. What can I say? But considering something that happened a while ago, I went to the doctor, and my first time going in a while because fortunately I don't get sick. So um, I went there and they started asking me a bunch of questions, which was part of the normal intake procedure, I guess. And the questions were pretty straightforward. Things like, do you have trouble with your memory? Do you have pains and this and that? They were all health related. And then they threw a curveball into the mix. Do you have any guns in the home? They asked me. I'm sitting there and I'm like, what the heck? Now, why would somebody ask a question like that? Like, period. I mean, um, I don't own any guns, but I do target shooting, and you know, I own bows, and I shoot bows, but I have shot firearms. I put nearly 200 rounds to a 1911, my first range visit, and that was fun. And honestly, if I didn't live in a state like New Jersey where they're constantly trying to outlaw this, that, and the next thing, I probably would own firearms. It's just I can't see sinking the kind of money and effort into a hobby just to have some jablone come and try and take it all away. But I'm trying to figure out, like, look, why would you ask a question like that at all as part of your normal intake form? And then I thought about it and I said, maybe it's not anything sinister. Maybe it's just like, well, if we think you're depressed or we think you're, potential maniac or something, we want to know so we can tell the police. Here's my problem with that. And the reason I thought of this is because I was trying to think of an explanation that basically gave them the benefit of the doubt, right? Because I don't know these people. I've never been to that doctor's office before. I'm sitting there and I'm like, well, okay, why would they ask this? And the obvious answer is anti-gun attitudes in the culture, just thinking about that as something that's bad and whatever, which I don't understand that. I mean, would you think poorly of somebody because they went golfing on Sunday or because they ride their bike? No. So why would you think poorly of somebody because they go target shooting or whatever? Right? I don't understand this. But okay, trying to find an explanation that gives them the benefit of the doubt. I was thinking, well, maybe they're asking in case they think the person is has mental issues. Here's the problem, though. This was part of the general intake. It wasn't like they asked, "Are you depressed?" And then, as a follow-up, if you said yes, they asked, "Do you have any guns in the home?" They just asked, "Do you have any guns in the home?" As part of the normal questioning. It would be one thing if they asked a question about your mental state, for example, are you depressed? And then if you said yes, they followed it up with asking, well, do you have any weapons in the home? That you might, I still think it's a little bit of a reach for a doctor to be asking that sort of thing because it doesn't have anything to do with your health. But at least you could say there's a logic there. They asked if you're depressed, you said yes, so then they asked if you have weapons, presumably, again, trying to prevent a suicide or some other crime. Here's the thing, that's not what they did. They just flat out asked, do you have weapons? So you could be totally undepressed. You could be somebody who's in a perfect mental state, and they're still asking you, do you have weapons? So, I tried to think of a reason that they would ask this sort of thing that, again, that gave them the benefit of the doubt. And I couldn't make it work Because again, the only reason I can think of is, well, okay, they'd be asking that in case maybe you were depressed, but it wasn't a follow-up question. It was a primary question. Again, it wasn't like they said, are you depressed? And if you answered yes, and only if you answered yes, they then asked about weapons. They just asked about weapons. So again, even a person who has no mental issues whatsoever, isn't depressed, isn't feeling down, isn't feeling anger at anybody, they still want to know if you have guns in your home. Why would anyone ask that? Unless they just thought there was something bad about firearms ownership. And again, why would you go to the trouble to ask a question like that unless you wanted to do something with the information? Now, I don't know if somebody's making a list and checking it twice. I don't know if this is part of Obamacare, that they're, required to ask this as, again, maybe some sort of, anti-gun strategy. But, they didn't ask me how many bicycles I had. I can tell you right now, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I have about half a dozen, right? They didn't ask me how many bicycles I had. They didn't ask me, do I do archery? How many bows do I have? How often do I shoot my bow? They didn't ask me if I fence with swords. They didn't ask me if I, draw or if I read books or anything else somebody might do as a hobby. There was no question like, do you collect postage stamps? They just asked about, do you have weapons in the home? Do you have firearms? And I kind of wonder why. And I haven't been able to think of a legitimate answer, except for the fact that, again, they don't like the fact that people have weapons, that there's this anti-gun attitude, that this may in fact be part of some gun control agenda. And that sounds kind of extreme until you realize that this happened. This isn't somebody on, Fox News or something talking about it like, oh, this is a hypothetical thing somebody may do. No, this happened. I was there. They asked me these questions. And, I kind of laughed it off. And the lady asked me that it was the nurse who was just going down a list of questions prior to me meeting with the physician. And when she got to the one about guns, do you have any guns in the home? I said, well, no, but I wish I did because that would be fun. And of course, I was speaking as a target shooter, as somebody who does archery, as somebody who does think guns are cool too and has shot them. So, but she kind of looked at me like, what's wrong with this guy? And then I explained, well, I do archery, I do target shooting, so yeah, I think guns would be kind of fun too. And then she's like, oh, okay, and she moved on to more questions. But, yeah, I laughed it off. But what I probably should have said, and I think I said this before when I talked about it, what I probably should have said if I had really had time to think about it. I hadn't been to a doctor in a while. I was just kind of, operating off the top of my head. She asked me a question and I gave the honest answer. Do you have any guns? Well, no, but that'd be cool. What I probably should have said is, it's none of your damn business, and you shouldn't be asking this question. And I don't think they should. Again, it's one thing if it was a follow-up to a question about your mental state, but it wasn't. It was a primary question. Like, do you have aches and pains? Do you get sick? Do you have, weakness in your fingers? Do you have trouble remembering things? Do you have balance issues? Oh, and do you own any guns? It's like, what? Again, they didn't ask me how many bikes I own. They didn't ask me if I go golfing. They didn't ask me what kind of car I drive. But they asked me if I owned any firearms. And I gotta wonder why. Why would you ask a question like that? Unless you had something against firearm ownership. And so I think frankly, I think this is sinister. I think they shouldn't be asking these questions. I don't see a reason for it. Again, it's not like they're asking, well, are you depressed? And then as a follow-up, they're asking if you have any weapons. They're just asking, do you have any weapons? And you know what? In that case, it's literally none of their damn business. It literally is. So, I just want to throw this out there. It's something that did happen. And, if you go to the doctor and they start asking you this kind of crap, Just tell them, look, I'm not going to answer that question. It's none of your business. Because it isn't. Lone Rider out.